Today we're talking web, so let's go in and we will start a new web application. I went to File, New, Project. You can go Web here, New Web Application, and we can give it any name that we want to give it. We're going to call this our student project, and then we'll just click OK. Now you'll notice here there's a couple of different things. First, we have the settings for identity in the web application, which is something we're not going to be discussing just yet. And then our second one we're going to have is this MVC information. Since we're not going to go in to identity, we're going to just click on Change Authentication. We'll put in no authentication for now and click OK. And then with our MVC template, click OK on this. Just click Cancel. We're not actually going to set anything up to the Azure, so if you get something for Azure, just click Cancel. And then it's going to go ahead and create an ASP.NET application for us with that MVC template. Okay, now we have our ASP.NET application. I want you to notice in here that we don't have any entity framework installed. So we can do that in a couple of different ways. We can go into our console and we can install it via the console, or we can install it via our NuGet package manager. So in order to install it with our package manager, just go into Projects, Manage your NuGet packages. Then we can, instead of the installed ones, let's look here as Browse. We'll look for, oh, there it is right there, Entity Framework. So if you click on that and download the latest stable framework, just click OK, and it is now installed. You can check here in your references to notice that it is indeed right there, Entity Framework is installed, and we're going to need that for what we're doing today. So the first thing I want you to notice is when we have our MVC package that we've brought, or MVC framework, that we have different folders that were created for us. So we have our controllers, we have our models, we have our views. These are all very, very important folders that the MVC framework will look into to pull our code via our Codeverse strategy that we are going to be utilizing with MVC. So the thing with Codeverse is that it just takes your classes and it maps them out to your database. It's a really simple way to code, and at a very minimum, it just requires simply a context class and a code class. So the context class is what goes between us and the database. It's kind of the all-purpose class, and it handles everything we do with our database. So this is our DbContext class, and the only other thing we need to work with it is our class. So just kind of give you a quick idea of what this is going to look like, and we'll look at some code next. Okay, we're going to go and do a really quick console application to show you, to show you how the DbContext works. So do a really quick C# console application. We'll just name it console application 1. That's just fine. Click OK. Yeah, we'll go ahead and save that solution. Then we need to just make sure we install Entity Framework really quick again. So we'll just go ahead and let's manage those NuGet packages once more. Of course, we don't have any installed, so it defaults to the installed ones. Let's go to Browse. It's right there at Entity Framework, and we'll install that framework into the application. Perfect. There it is. It's all installed, and we are ready to go. We have a little console application called Program, and this is how I'm going to show you how to work with this program to go back and forth between the context class and a regular class. One thing I want to kind of mention as we are typing in our class here is that Codeverse versus kind of a design view is actually It's a lot more efficient. You don't have all that messy behind the scenes stuff that the designer will do. If you just keep yourself in code and you work in code and you don't have to worry about a designer, it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot more efficient, and overall you just can have a better product. So let's put some information in here. We're going to do some getters and setters. Hopefully you guys remember what those are. We're going to do student ID, and then let's just do a first name and a last name. If I can type this right. One thing you should be aware of when we're doing this and we're hooking everything up to the database via Entity is that when we put a string here as our data type, it's going to go in the database as invarchar max, because the database really does not have any sort of way to determine what type of string it's going to be. So it doesn't know what length it'll be. I mean, you can go back in and you can adjust it so you're not doing the max for every single string. Obviously, you don't need a max length for a first name or a last name. You can adjust those to save space in your database. That's something you should keep in mind for later. So we have a little student class, and we have a context class. So let's do our student context class, and it's going to be a database. There we go. A database, and I'm not typing. Context class. And what we're going to need for that is we're going to need to create a set, a DB set, or it's like a list of our student type that we had. And we'll call that, probably guessed it, students, if we can spell it correctly. And then do a get set on this. It already tabs me over, so I'm good there. Now you notice we have an error here, a little red squiggly. It's because we haven't brought in our namespace, and you can bring that in. Usually there's some sort of little helper here. It says the namespace cannot be found. It's not bringing in my namespace, so we'll have to go ahead and we'll type it in manually. Usually there's some sort of little helper that'll allow you to go ahead and import that namespace. And I don't see that just yet, so we'll just go right up to the top and we'll type that namespace in manually just right here. And that namespace is system.data.entity. We've brought that in. Now if we go down, we should see that our error is gone. We can keep moving forward. So all we've done is installed Entity Framework. We've got a student class and a student context class. So here we just have an entry for our students using a DB set, and now we're going to go ahead and use it and show you how to get things working. So using var context, make that equal to new, we always have to new up a context. So we're going to create a new student context right there. You never want to cache it. You always want a new one, and then you always want to cache it when you're done. So that's what this using statement's for. We're going to create a new one, and then once we get outside of this statement, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of it. Okay, so we've got var students equals context dot, make sure I'm spelling that right, context Oh, I terminated that statement there. Haha. Context dot. Then we'll find our students list right there. So context dot students, and we're good to go. Now, this var is shorthand, but it's not like a JavaScript var. It's still very strictly typed. It will look to this side and determine what type of var or variable or data type it needs to be. If it's an int, it will make it an int. If it's a long, it'll make it a long, but it is still very strictly typed. It's not going to dynamically change anything, so please keep that in mind. It is not like JavaScript. And once again, so where are we getting the students? We're getting this down here, this student's property that we have down there. So this is going to be a potential list in the database of student. So this is it. This is our data access code that's going to go to the database. And if there happens to be an entry in the database, then it will return that to me. So pretty simple so far. Let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Save it. Go ahead and run that. Yep. It worked. Nothing happened. So no error. So we're good so far. So it might lead you to wonder, well, what happened? There was no database. How did this work? So we're going to talk a little bit about how Entity Framework does find our database. And I just want to touch briefly on the point that what happens is Entity Framework has actually created the database in the back end for us. And we'll look at that flow in just a second here. So we'll change this up and we'll say students.count. And we will just rename this count because now we're getting a number. Perfect. And on here, we're just going to write out to the console. So console.writeLine. And let's go ahead and do the count. And so that we can pause it and you can see what's going on, we'll do a console.readLine. And that'll give us a little bit of a pause. If we hit F5, that'll go ahead and start that. And we actually, there's 0. Let's go to, didn't mean to maximize that. Let's go to edit, mark. Okay, you can see the 0 there, but it's really hard to see. So let's go to properties. So there we go. Let's make the font bigger. Well, that's the window size. Let's make the font bigger. So go to colors. Let's make the background color white and the screen text color black. Perfect. And layout is fine, but yeah, we're going to make it a little bit bigger so that we can see it better. Click OK. Awesome. Now you can see that there is indeed 0 entries in the database right now. So everything is working as we expected so far. So right now we have nothing in our database. So we're querying the database, but I want to show you how we can actually get something in the database and take a look at that. So let's go ahead and let's go to context.students.add, and this is how we're going to add a new student, and we need to give it some sort of inline properties. So what do we want to give it? Well, we had a student ID, we had a first name, we had last name. Those will be our inline initializers. we actually don't want to do the student ID because student ID is going to be our primary key, and the primary key is going to be a number in the database that's usually set up as an increment. If you think about your current student ID that you have, it is set up incrementally so that every time a student enrolls, then that ID will increment to another number. And the database will actually do that for you so that you don't ever duplicate a primary key in the database. But we do have a first name, and so we can set up a first name. We're going to have Bob, and we do have a last name as well, so we can also set up a last name. And we'll do Smith. So we have Bob Smith. So we're adding a new student, first name Bob, last name Smith, and we're going to go ahead and do another count. Only we don't have to do a var this time. Awesome. Once again, this var right here is just like if I did an int. It's not strongly typed, but it does look at the right side here and determine what type of data type this needs to be over here. Okay, the shorthand for us, but all the work is done on the in the background for us. So we've added our student to the context. We've said, hey, here's a student, and now we need to tell the context to go to the database and save the changes. This is an important part, okay? So after we add that, we need to make sure that we save those changes to the database. If you don't do that, it won't save them. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll, let's see. Let's just set a breakpoint really quick. Then we'll just run it in debug or F5, however you want to do that. Okay, so we've got count is. Let's step through. Okay, you see that count is 0 so far, and we're going to go ahead and keep stepping through. And we're going to go to the count here and check one more time. And notice our count is now 1 down here at the bottom. So now we have 0, and here's 1 down here. So if we keep stepping through, we now have, step through one more time. We now have 0, and where's our 1? Okay, so now it's showing that there's our 1. It didn't show it the first time. Oh, because I didn't write it out the first time. So let's go ahead and we need to write it out. So, or not the first time, the second time. So after we count it once, let's go ahead and count it again. All right, now let's run it. And well, now we have even more in the database. It keeps saving it. So you can see that every time we put in an entry, it's saving another one. So now we have 2, and then we had 3. So it keeps on adding another entry and saving that to the database and then showing us our new count. So that's working as expected. So now let's go ahead and say, let's add Bobby Smythe. Okay, so we'll go ahead and let's run that. And now we've added a Bobby Smythe. We have 4 entries now, 3 Bob Smiths and 1 Bobby Smythe. And we can actually query the database from here. And we can do var students equals some context dot, oh, not minus, we want that to equals, okay, some context dot students dot where, and then here's where we're actually getting some cool stuff. Okay, this is link, and we're going to pick a letter here. It doesn't matter. It can be O, Q, X, Z, T, whatever letter you want to pick. Maybe we'll do H. Maybe we'll do S for students. So here's our lambda. The letter doesn't matter, but the letter does now tie into the rest of the statement. Kind of creates its own little instance of this object, if you will. So we'll say where last name dot contains Smythe. Okay, so this letter doesn't matter at all. Any letter can be used here. And then we have the lambda is making it so that it's recognizing this where syntax and returning this album object. So now if we run it, we've got 4, we've got 5. Oh, you know what we need to do? So what's going to happen? We missed a very important concept here. The to list. So this is a little thing that is extremely important in the web environment. What you need to remember is that if we're creating a query and entity framework, if we did just this section without a to list, so I've just got this section and I haven't done anything with it, I haven't asked for a new count, I haven't done anything, it doesn't actually hit the database unless we tell it to do something yet. So by saying we want you to take the results and we want the database to convert it to a list, is actually accessing the database there. Let's just change this now, and we'll just say students dot count. We'll just change this to students dot count, and then we'll run that. And prints out 5 because that's what we had before, and then it shows us that there's actually going to be 3 instances of Bobby Smythe. Well, where the last name is Smythe. Because we've run it a few times now, so now we're just adding it to the database every single time. So that is why we have 3 entries that match or that contain Smythe. So now we're going to take this and copy it out. Because this is all awesome, but we are using a console application here. So we're actually going to show the MVC, and that will be in our next video. So you can be done with this video for now, and now we're going to use this code, and we're going to show how to do the database context in the MVC application. So see you in a minute.